Hey, Nissan Moser here, the traveling investor. How are you? Welcome to another show, another awesome traveling investor live Q&A show where we demystify the art of mastering your mind, body, and wallet. And we are born into our families and we're born into our society and our socioeconomic world and to the parents and to our parents' financial reality. But what most people don't understand is that just because we're born into a specific household, that doesn't mean that's where we have to end up. Someone once told me being born poor is not my fault, but dying poor is. And a majority of people live their life by default. They accept the cards that they were dealt and offer no resistance to mediocrity. Here on the Traveling Investor Show, we talk about how to live life on your terms and create the life, finances, and relationships that people dream of. Join me, Nissan Moser, your host, every week on the live Traveling Investor Show, where we demystify the art of mastering your mind, body, and wallet so that you can be at every softball game, at every recital, and tell your boss to go kiss your ass. Now, we're told that it doesn't matter how much money you make, but how much money you save. And real estate is one of the best industries to be in, to be able to save money. And what am I talking about saving money? I'm talking about saving money on taxes, on deferred capital gains taxes, on all these things. Because if you look at the tax code, if you look at all of the taxes, all the tax code is written, most of it is written on how not to pay taxes. I'll give you an example. Section 1031. Section 1031 talks about a 1031 exchange where you sell a piece of property, okay, and now you've made money. If you sell that property and you made $100,000, you're going to have to pay capital gains on that profit that you just made. But if you do a 1031 exchange where you take that profit and you go and you buy another property, you roll it into another property, guess what? You can buy a bigger asset that's valued even higher than what you bought. And now you don't have to pay capital gains taxes on that. And that's what real estate can do for you. It can create wealth very, very easily. And today we're going to talk about what vehicles are out there for you to go out and to buy real estate, create your wealth, your empire, build your empire, create wealth for you and your family, and put them in vehicles that are going to offer you either tax-free or tax-deferred. And my guest today is someone who's been in the business for years and years and years. His name is Brian Martinez. And Brian, he's a senior IRA specialist with a company called New View Trust Company. And what they do, they've helped new and seasoned investors alike using self-directed IRAs, HSAs, and solo 401ks to significantly build and secure your wealth. And since 2018, Brian has specialized in educating investors on how to purchase passive real estate in tax-deferred or entirely tax-free vehicle with New View Trust. Brian, I was talking to him before we got on. He exudes passion when educating others. He comes from a completely different background, and it's amazing how many people get involved in real estate from one way or another, from another angle, but they come from different worlds. Brian's primary focus is on building relationships with local RIAs, syndicators, investors, raising capital, or those looking to lend their money through their IRAs to other real estate investors. So if you want to become a hard money lender, if you want to become a private lender, if you want to become the bank, right, and make money and not have to pay deferred taxes on your profits, this is the guy to listen to. So before I bring him on, go grab a pen and a piece of paper and start taking notes, because this guy's going to give you a ton of information on how you can go out there and create your empire tax-free or tax-deferred. Brian, what's happening, my man?
Hey, Neat-san, thank you so much for having me. That was a great introduction. You definitely summed it up.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for being here. I know you're super busy. I appreciate it.
Anytime, I'm happy to be here. The more people I can touch, I feel like I'm impacting lives and sharing my knowledge. And like you said before, I'm passionate about what I do and how I can change people that just don't know that they can use vehicles like IRAs to build their wealth. Most people think they can only put their money in the stock market, but that's far from the truth.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So before we go into that, why don't you share with us a little bit about who you were before New View, what made you get into it, and how you've grown with that company, with New View.
Yeah. So, I mean, my story's a little different. I didn't know a whole lot about investing. I was working in the fitness industry. I was a GM of, a fitness center, and I opened quite a few locations, and, I was learning leadership skills and sales skills. And one of my clients came in, started telling me about what she did. I gave her a little tour of the gym before she joined, and she told me that she invests in parking lots. And I said, with your IRA, but how do you do that? Like, is that legal? Is this a pyramid scheme? I had no idea what a self-directed IRA was. And I was really intrigued by this because I had left the previous company and I had a 401k, and they kind of gave me some options on how I can move it here, there, and what I can do with it. But they didn't tell me about a self-directed IRA, and they didn't tell me the types of investments I can make. So I made the most common mistake that most people do, and I cashed out that 401k. Now, if I knew then what I know now, I would not have done that. I would have been investing in real estate with that money. So what I did, I went to NewView. We have a classroom here, and I sat in on one of the classes. It was an introduction class, and started listening to alternative assets and how you can use traditional IRAs, the difference between a Roth IRA, what's tax deferred, what's tax free. If you're self-employed, a solo 401k. Not only that, a health savings account. I've had health savings accounts for years. Did not know you can invest that money. I just left it in the bank and used it for medical expenses. Like I said, if I knew this stuff back then when I was in my 20s, I would have been doing this a long time ago.
Absolutely. That's great, man. So you got started with New View how long ago?
So 4 years I've been doing teaching people, educating all across the country about self-directed IRAs.
Awesome. And share with us, what does New View do? What exactly do they do?
So NewView, what we are is called a self-directed IRA custodian. What we do is we give people the ability to choose investments that are outside of the stock market. Now, we're not financial advisors, we're not CPAs. So it's really up to you as the client to tell us what you want to invest in. Now, what we can do is put you in a room. We do events with a lot of like-minded investors that are already self-directing their IRAs and educate you on the different opportunities in real estate or private lending, or some people invest in things like crypto or invest in private entities, LLCs, syndications. We can put you in that room, but it's up to you to choose the investment and figure out how you want to grow your wealth.
Okay. Now, all right. So let's take a couple of steps back. Explain to us, what does IRA stand for?
So an IRA is an individual retirement account.
Now, can entrepreneurs, self-employed people create their own IRAs?
So anyone that has earned income is eligible to open an IRA. Most of the time, people get started because they left an employer, they had a 401k plan at that point, and they can do what's called a direct rollover. Typically, if it's pre-tax dollars, which most of the time it is, it can be rolled over to what's called a traditional IRA. If there are post-tax dollars, they've already paid the taxes on it, that would be rolled over to a Roth IRA. So that's how most people do get started. But if you are listening and you want to get started in an IRA, yesterday was when you should have got started. You can contribute every year a certain amount. So a traditional and a Roth IRA, $6,000 a year you can get started with. Now, it's up to you to figure out how you want to grow your wealth. Do you want to be tax deferred or tax free? So that's where we come into play. We can educate you on the differences.
Okay. Well, you want to share with us like one or two differences between tax deferred and tax free?
Sure. So tax deferred, a traditional IRA, a SEP IRA, maybe even a solo 401k, which is kind of cool. I can't wait to talk more about that plan. Those are tax deferred vehicles. So what that means is when you make your contributions, it's going to be tax deductible. But when it grows after 59 and a half years old and you want to start taking those distributions, that's when you pay the taxes, and it's based on what your tax bracket is at that time. Now, after the age 59 and a half, most people are already retired, so you're probably at your lowest tax bracket. That strategy might work for you. Now, the Roth IRA is taxed differently. Whatever you contribute to the Roth, you're going to pay the taxes on now. Going forward, it grows tax exempt. And when you take it out after the age 59 and a half, it's tax free. Another difference is a traditional IRA has what's called RM, required minimum distributions. At the age of 72 years old, you've had that money working for you for years. You might not have really needed it to retire yet. You're leaving it for your beneficiaries. But once you reach the age 72, you're required to take a certain amount each year. And then your beneficiaries, when they inherit it, they have to start taking that money out as distributions up to 10 years until they've completely taken all that money out. Now, in a Roth IRA, you are not subject to those required minimum distributions. So you can keep your money working for you as long as you need to, and your beneficiaries will inherit it at the amount that it was when you pass away. And that's a great way to build legacy wealth. You did mention how you can build wealth for your family.
Sure.
This is a great way to do it. Do you want to leave them a tax deferred account where they'll pay taxes on it, or a tax free account? It's completely up to you.
Okay, we have a question here. How do we know which strategy do we want to use?
That's a great question. I can't give you financial advice. Everyone's situation is different. The best thing I can say is talk to a financial advisor. Let them know that, hey, I need to figure out if a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA works better for me, for my investments. Now, I've had some clients that do things like maybe they're doing a fix and flip in their IRA, and they know I have $100,000 in my IRA. I'm going to buy this house, or I'm partnered with somebody else on this investment. We're going to do a flip. And they're expecting a large amount of returns. Sometimes what they do is called a Roth conversion. So they convert their traditional money into a Roth because they know that when they make that investment, they sell that property after the flip is done, they're not going to pay taxes on the profit they made from that flip. So that's a strategy some people like to do. It really comes down to what you're doing. Are you a passive investor? Are you an active investor? And how many years do you really have to grow that IRA? So if you're younger and you're okay to take that tax hit and pay those taxes now, and you have the rest of your life to, keep growing that tax free, then maybe do it. Now, if you're already maybe 55, 65, and you want to do a Roth conversion, well, it might not be the best time to do it. I'm not saying clients don't do it, but it might not, because now you're going to pay the taxes on it, but it's going to grow for you tax free up until you pass away. You don't have a whole lot of time left. So it depends on the investment you're making. You got to talk to your financial advisor and see what works best for you.
Awesome. Let me ask you this. How many IRA accounts can a person have?
Okay, so you can have multiple accounts. You can have a traditional IRA. You can have a Roth IRA. You can have employer plans like a simple IRA, a SEP IRA. The thing is, you can't exceed the contribution limits each year. So you are limited to $6,000 a year to contribute to either a Roth or traditional IRA. That's the contribution limits. Now, if you wanted to contribute $3,000 to a Roth and $3,000 to traditional, you can do that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't exceed that contribution limit. By the way, if you're over the age of 50, there's an additional $1,000 you can contribute to it. Okay, so you can have multiple accounts. That's fine. I have many clients that have multiple.
But the contribution level is 6,000. No matter how many accounts you have, that's the limit.
Correct, for those two accounts. Now, the SEP IRA, the solo 401k, they have higher contribution limits because these are called employer plans. So it's for your business. It's you creating a retirement plan for your business. With the SEP IRA, you can contribute up to $61,000. Now, how do you do that? It's up to 25% of whatever your earned income is at the end of the year, and it's an employer contribution. So that's a great strategy to start building your wealth if you're self-employed. You do need to be self-employed to be eligible for the SEP IRA. Same thing with the solo 401k. You do need to be self-employed. Now, this one is a little bit different. This is creating a 401k plan for your self-employed business, and it has the kind of like a perk of both the traditional and a Roth IRA. You get to contribute as the employee of your business $20,500. Now, if you're over the age of 50, there's an additional $6,500 that you can also contribute. It's called a catch-up contribution. Okay, so not only that is you can also do the employer match of up to 25% of your earned income. The maximum for a solo 401k you can contribute is $67,000. So it's more than the SEP IRA. The cool thing about it is, as the employee contribution, you can decide if you want those dollars to be pre-taxed or post-tax. Completely up to you. And that makes a difference on how you're going to grow that wealth, whether it's going to be tax deferred or tax free. So that's one thing I love about the solo 401k. The other thing I love about the solo 401k is if I'm investing in anything that involves a mortgage or a loan or leverage, like a syndication, a multifamily deal, or I'm getting a rental property, but I need to use a what's called non-recourse loan as well because I don't have enough money. If I do that in a solo 401k, I'm exempt from a tax called unrelated debt financed income tax. Solo 401ks are the only plan exempt from that. If you did that same thing in any type of IRA, you took a loan or a mortgage out, you're subject to that UDFI tax. So that's why I do like the solo 401k. In order to be eligible, you have to be self-employed with no employees. So a lot of people like real estate agents, personal trainers, I'm trying to think attorneys. Those are the common types of people we see opening solo 401ks.
Now, when you said that there's you said that there's a $61,000 limit or a 6,000 for the IRAs, correct? Do we have to, once we open it up, do we have to contribute that amount every single year, or that's a maximum that we can contribute?
Correct. That is just the maximum. You don't have to contribute that much. You don't even have to make contributions if you don't want to. But if you want to make contributions, you can max it out that way.
Okay.
Another thing I wanted to mention, and going back to a little bit to the solo 401k, that plan, you do have to make contributions to at least some type of a contribution in order to keep that plan active for yourself. Like I said, if you take on any employees, then you might have to move that money from a solo 401k to an IRA. That way you stay within compliance with the IRS.
Got it. Got it. I guess you can fund with your IRA, you can fund anything, right? You can buy real estate, you can fund insurance policies. No.
Almost anything. So there are
Almost anything.
you cannot invest in. So these are what are completely off the table. You can't invest in collectibles. That's prohibited. You also cannot invest in life insurance. That is meant for after you pass away. So yeah, life insurance is off the table as well. But there's still a lot of things you can invest in, especially when it comes to real estate. Rental properties, short-term rentals. You can buy land. You can buy offshore real estate. You can invest in multifamily, self-storage, mobile home parks. I mean, the list just goes on and on when it comes to real estate. And then same thing with private entities. You know, if somebody's raising capital for apartments, student housing, hospitals, commercial property, you can invest in that. That all falls under real estate as well. And then, like I said, there's other types of things like precious metals, cryptocurrencies, startup companies, tech companies, anything like that you can invest in. So there's a wide range of things you can invest in. The biggest thing is you want to invest in things you know and you understand.
Sure.
Rather than invest in something like the stock market, which most people have no control over and they don't understand how that market works. And they put their money here and there, or they might trust a third party person to do it for them. But that third party is also taking commissions from what they're making. So that's another thing people don't even realize that they're losing money on. And the market hasn't been performing very well. I know, I have some money in the market and I took it out. Actually, I cashed it out yesterday because I've just been losing money the past 2 months. I don't know about you, the listeners right now, but it wasn't safe for me. I didn't want to lose any more money. I set a cap on how much I was willing to lose, and I hit that cap and I said, all right, I'm taking my money out, and I just put everything in cash.
There you go. There you go. So, all right. So let me ask you this. I take money out, invest it in single family. You said short-term rental as well, which, cash flow is really incredible on things like that. Or let's say I invested in a syndication, in a multifamily property, right? I become a passive investor. The cash flow, the distributions that I would get from those investments, those have to go back into the IRA, correct? Or can I use that money to live on?
So no, it would go back into the IRA. This is a retirement plan, so it's meant for after you retire, of course. If you did want to take the money out earlier, before the age 59 and a half, you can do that. Typically, there's a 10% penalty, though. If you're willing to take that hit, then yeah, you can take it off and live off of. The cool thing about the solo 401k is you can take a loan against a 401k. You cannot take a loan from an IRA. You can take a loan up to $50,000, a personal loan, but you do pay it back. So you're really paying yourself back, and you can pay it back. You pay it back with interest, which the interest rate is prime plus 1% to make it fair. So yeah, you borrowed money from your 401k. You're paying yourself back over 5 years. you have to make at least quarterly payments.
Mhm.
So if you do need to survive off it and you're qualified for the solo 401k plan, you might want to look at that. But like I said, this is a retirement plan. So it's really meant for when you retire, so you can retire comfortably and hopefully wealthy if you make the right decisions.
Right. So, do we put the IRAs into our personal names, into our estate names? How does that structure work? So, a lot of people, especially when they invest in real estate, they start creating LLCs, and then they have the trusts everywhere, and this one goes there, right? To kind of make it difficult for people to find. So, how would you structure that? Would that be under a personal name, or obviously you're not an attorney, and we all know that you just play one on TV, right? But from your experience, what do you see?
I see all kinds of asset protection things, honestly, whether it's a trust, an LLC. But the cool thing about using a self-directed IRA, if you're looking for that anonymity, the best way to do it is don't put your name on the deed. You don't have to. You can completely leave your name out of it. It's actually the IRA that's listed as the investor. So here
Mhm.
at NewView, it's
Okay.
titled as NewView Trust Custodian, and then FBO, which is for benefit of, and you don't have to put your name. You can put your account number instead of your name, and it's valid just like that. And then you can close on the property, and your name is not even associated with it. So that's one option. Some people do create an LLC. In the LLC, their IRA is the member, they are the manager, and within that LLC, they'll make their investments. That's called checkbook control. Same thing with the trust. You can do that as well.
Mhm.
Honestly, people can still look up the LLC and see who the manager
Sure.
is. So I really don't believe, in my opinion, like you said, I'm not an attorney, but in my opinion, that's not giving you the best, keeping you anonymous for asset protection purposes, because you can look that up.
Right.
So I think, honestly, you don't need the LLC, you don't need the trust. But yeah, there are some people that have layers and layers and layers of, protections, I would say.
Awesome. All right. Let me ask you this now. Uh, Children, right? We talked about earlier. I've got two teenage girls and whatnot.
Mhm.
Do you recommend starting an IRA or a retirement plan for children? And if yes, how early, or do we wait till they turn 18? What's kind of game plan on that?
That's a great question. I think more children should have IRAs, but in order to have an IRA, what is required? You have to have earned income. So I'm gonna give you some examples of what I've seen clients do. I can't recommend anybody open an account for anyone, but this is what I recommend. What I see clients do. For example, I have one client. She's a photographer. She has a 7-year-old son, and she took pictures of him and she used those pictures for marketing purposes. So she compensated him for his services and for all her marketing material, and she contributed to a Roth IRA for him. Why not? It's earned income. Pay taxes on it, and now she's been partnering that Roth IRA with her other IRAs together, and that IRA has grown. So that's one option I've seen clients do. When your kids turn 16, 15, 16, and they can start working, encourage them to open an IRA and start saving. The Roth has a 5-year clock. So if they do contribute to any type of IRA, I would say a Roth, get that clock ticking sooner than later, because like I said,
What
it's
is
going
that
to force
clock? What is
them.
that clock ticking?
Yeah, so you don't really get the perks of a Roth until you've had it for 5 years. That's
Mm,
why when I mentioned, if you're older, 55, 65, and you want to do a Roth conversion, might not be the best solution for you at that point, depending, on your circumstances and you're willing to take that tax hit. But if you start it sooner, you start that 5-year clock, and you start contributing to that Roth now, it's always going to grow for you tax exempt, and you can take that money out tax free once you hit 59 and a half years old.
hmm Okay. Okay, great. And for kids, but before that, you mentioned that your client with the photographer, you said she combined or he combined the
They partnered.
IRAs together. What is it?
Mhm.
Explain that.
So she does private lending. She created a note,
Okay.
and part of the note, one of the owners was her son's IRA, and the bulk of it, because he only had $6,000 in his, the bulk of it was her IRA, and they did a private loan,
Uh,
and they've actually done a few notes since then. So this is 3 years ago that she did it,
mhm.
and so his IRA is already growing for him, and he's what, 10 years old now, and it's she's going to keep rinsing and repeating and doing it over and over, and I'm sure by the time this kid is 18 years old, he's going to have a nice Roth already set up for him.
Right. Now that's the thing, right? You have a Roth and it says 18, it's probably going to have a ton of money in it, right? But this kid or whoever it is can't actually touch that money till they retire or they pay a 10% fine.
Correct.
Right?
Exactly.
Is it 10% on the amount that they have in the account or the amount that they want to pull out?
The amount that they take out. They're going to pay taxes and penalties, but the cool thing about the Roth is the contributed part of the money, you've already paid taxes on that. So that's not going to be taxed, but he will take the 10% penalty if he takes out before the age 59 and a half.
Got it. Wow. There are so many moving parts to this, right? I mean, travelers, if you're out there listening to this, and this is something that you want to do, you need to seek professional help like Brian over here so that he can walk you through everything. Because, Brian, you're going to get a call from me. That's for sure. And we're going to talk, I'm going to show you my estate structure and see what I can do. Open up a couple of IRA accounts for my kids, start investing. Because my goal also is to start lending.
Okay.
Right. It's great going out there and finding properties and multifamily and whatnot, but it's a lot nicer to just push paper.
I was going to say the same thing. It's nice being a landlord, but it's even nicer where you don't have to be the landlord. You'd have tenants, you'd have toilets, and you just let your money work for you.
That's right.
It's up to you. You have to figure out what your niche is and what you're willing to do. I know for my mom, she's a full-time worker. She's a grandma. She doesn't have time to be a landlord anymore. So she's been doing private lending, since I taught her about self-directed IRAs, and it's very easy for her. She doesn't have to worry about it. She just has to make sure that check comes in every month and she's happy. And you get to negotiate the terms of the note, which is pretty cool too. What I've seen clients do with their note is have the borrower pay the custodial fees. So yeah, our services aren't free. We have fees. They're not very high. They're very reasonable, but some clients
got to make money.
Yeah. Some clients incorporate those fees in the note where the borrower just pays their annual fee for them every year. It's right there and it's included, and they don't have any expenses for what we do for them. So it's pretty cool strategy I've seen people do.
That's fantastic. That's great. Now you said 6,000 is the most that we can contribute when you open an account. Are you allowed to? And I think you mentioned this with the 401k, the solo 401, that you're allowed 61,000. Is that the only account that you can put in a big lump at the start, or are there other types of assets? Because we got investors listening, and I'm sure somebody just flipped a house, made up 50K, 100K, and they're like, okay, can I take this $100,000 and put it into my 401 or put it into my IRA? What can they do with that?
Yes, great question. As long as it's earned income, either a SEP IRA or a solo 401k, and then I'll compare the differences. It's probably better to talk to somebody one-on-one, and we can dissect what they're eligible for, and then which IRA might be best for them. I always suggest they speak with a CPA as well before they make any decisions. But yeah, I can give you all the pros and the cons to every plan. It's not really a lot of cons. It's mostly pros. And it's really up to you. If you're already making these investments with your cash and you're paying those capital gains taxes, why not do the same thing in an IRA as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's better than sitting in a savings account in the bank.
Yeah, exactly.
This is money that you can grow. Now, let me ask you, I know and from my lack of knowledge, right, I'm bringing this question. So if I created a Roth or a 401, one of these retirement accounts for myself and for my kids, and there's money in there, right? And I'm an owner operator, I'm a syndicator. I put multifamily deals together. Can I take my IRA? Can I take my kids' IRA and invest it into my deals that I'm the sponsor, guarantor, operator, so forth?
So unfortunately, no, you wouldn't be able to do that. And I'm going to explain to you why. There are what's called disqualified parties that your IRA is not allowed to do any transactions with. The disqualified parties are the IRA owner, so yourself, your spouse, your parents, your grandparents, your children, and your grandchildren, and then spouses of your children and grandchildren. Those are all disqualified parties. So your ascendants and your descendants. The IRS said these are disqualified parties, so you can't invest in their companies. You can't directly lend them the money if you're doing a note. So unfortunately, no, you can't do that. Now, there are family members that are not disqualified, like brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews, any branches of your family tree. They're okay. You can invest in their deals, and they can invest in your deals, but just those family members you got to keep them out because it's not a passive investment. You
Got
got to
it.
keep
Got it.
it
And
on
I guess
point.
that's why, lending is such a good thing, because you're lending to other parties, you're lending to third parties, and you're not worrying about them actually managing the asset and paying you a distribution on the profits. You're the bank and they got to pay you. Or you just took over a property. Right. So,
And then you were talking about the kids, so I want to go back to that and mention one more thing. There are what's called education savings accounts as well, and we can open those. Those can also be self-directed. The contribution limits are not tax deductible. It's only $2,000 a year you can contribute to it. But if you're doing something like private lending, even though it's a small amount, this is for college. This is an education savings account. It could actually be used for private schools, tuition, books, internet, anything that's a school expense, you can use it for. But if you have small kids or grandkids, this is another plan that you can partner on top of the health savings account, the
mhm.
IRAs, your kids' IRAs. You can partner all together, and that's how you start building your wealth. The more plans you have, the more you're making those contributions, and you're growing that account. I wish my parents knew about investing when I was a kid, because I'm paying for college, and I'm probably going to pay for college until the day I die, honestly. I went to an expensive school, and they didn't help me pay for it. They didn't have any savings for it. I didn't come from a rich family. In your introduction you talked about that, but because of what I've learned, I've passed that knowledge on as a legacy to my nieces, my nephews, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, and now I'm helping them partner together on their own investments.
Awesome, man. Dude, you got me thinking, you got my mind going, you got my mind racing, tons of information. That is fantabulous, as we say. How can people reach you? How can they get on New View? How can they get more information from you?
Yeah, so the best way to reach me or my team is to email IRA specialists with an S, IRA specialists at newviewtrust.com. And Nuview is spelled NUVIEW, then trust, TRUST.com.
Awesome. Brian, thank you so much for enlightening us on ways that we can save money on taxes and tax deferred, and set up our children. Uh, for those of us that have kids, one of the things that we worry most about is what's going to happen to them when we're gone. How are they going to live? And especially in today's world where there's so much going on out there. There's so much anxiety about money, and industries changing, and what's going to happen in the future, and oh my god, and what's going on. It's nice for parents who have kids to be able to set something up like this and know that, what, when I'm gone, they're gonna when they retire, right? Everybody's got to go through their own journey in life, right? But when you get to that time at the end where you're like, all right, you know what, it's time to roll out the hammock. It's time to, grab that glass and then pour my drink and just watch the sunsets. You want to know that they're going to be okay, right? And this is one way of really taking out that stress for us as parents and making sure that our kids are set up in the future. Yeah. So thanks for educating us and bringing this incredible opportunities to light for us.
Yeah, 100%, Nitzan. Thank you so much. You're one of the best hosts I've ever worked with. You had some great questions. I hope the audience got some value out of what I'm putting out there. It's a lot of information, but you can find it on our website. Go to newviewtrust.com. We have an educational resources section on our website. A lot of great videos. They're short. They're not going to take too much of your time, but you'll be able to learn a lot there.
Awesome. Brian, thank you so much again. I appreciate it. And you're definitely going to be hearing from me. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Take care,
My
man.
pleasure.
Travelers, thank you so much for being here. Make sure you check us out on all the different podcast stations. We are live every week, Thursday, 3 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube. You can go to my YouTube channel, the Traveling Investor YouTube channel, and check out all the past shows as well. Like, subscribe, share, do what you got to do. Let's get the word out, because the more people that are relaxed, the more people that are enjoying life, the better our world will become. I'm Nitzan Mosry, the Traveling Investor. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next week somewhere on Spaceship Earth. Be well.